Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lincoln Journal Star's Life in the Red podcast. Your hosts, as usual, Luke Mullin, Amie Just, and Wilson Moore. As we record this and as it comes to you just about 2 weeks away from Nebraska's season opener at Minnesota. So still kind of going through the roster, getting on our season preview. Today we'll be talking defense, talking special teams, and of course, offering what we've learned from the last week or so. Got the chance, saw another practice. Some news comes out as it always does. And we'll start right there with kind of the big news of the week. Wide receiver Xavier Betts, one of those guys that we thought was maybe going to be a contributor there, one of the main targets in the offense. Matt Rule saying that he chose to leave the team. His heart wasn't in it, was a phrase that Rule said, which this is kind of a process that Xavier's been through in the last year or two. Kind of unfortunate to see it kind of, come to an end this way, so to speak, right before the season. But it stings from perhaps a personnel perspective, developing chemistry with Jeff Sims, like I said, a guy that they thought about on the outside, but from personal perspective too, it's tough. A guy that has all the talent, but like Rule said, his heart wasn't in it.
Yeah, I wish we could talk to Xavier about the situation. Yeah. Maybe more from his side will come to light. Obviously, you don't take as many credit hours as he did for no reason. So I wish him the best, and I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, he put in the work to get back, and, he was committed to it. Everybody in the program has good things to say about him. So even though he's moving on, not with the team right now, they still obviously wish him the best. But kind of the impact of that is that wide receiver right now, you got Billy Kemp, who's healthy. He's a guy who soaks up targets, but Marcus Washington's still out. Betts is gone too. It's kind of like, what are they doing? Who are they turning to at wide receiver? And there's some veterans that they've mentioned, guys that they want to see a little bit more of IGC Fleeks in that mix.
Yeah, it does leave Nebraska's receiver room in an interesting situation. It's a little thin. If you're Nebraska, you're hoping Marcus Washington is full go by the time the season starts, but he's dealt with a couple things now. So it does make you wonder, who is going to have to and who will be able to step up in that room, who maybe didn't do as much last year, an IGC type, or even one of the freshmen. I think it's interesting when we talked to Matt Rule the other day, he said, I don't think we need any of those freshman receivers to be contributors right away. It'd be nice if they were, but that's not going to be necessary immediately. He's confident in the depth of that room, but I wonder if with, the group just kind of thinning out here, if a Malachi Coleman type will be able to contribute in the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think it's tough for the freshmen because they talk about these guys are close to being like physically ready, but do they have the whole playbook down? Are they able to go at full speed? So that's some of the stuff that they'll be working towards here early in the season. But a couple guys, the wide receiver coach Garrett McGuire identified, 2 in-state walk-ons, Ty Hahn and Alex Bullock, and I think they kind of come to light with this Betts departure because they're kind of bigger frame, physical guys. I think I kind of fill that role on the outside. And Bullock in particular, Thomas Fidoni said really good things about him. We've heard a lot about he contributes on special teams too. McGuire just impressed with kind of his physicality, consistency, some of those same things that coaching staff's always looking for.
Yeah, and as Rule noted yesterday, he hasn't had a single season in his coaching career where a guy, started on the scout team and didn't end up making, an opportunity for himself playing later in the season. So you wonder if those two guys could fall into that mix, maybe play scout team early in the year, and by the time Wisconsin and Iowa roll around, make a difference on the field.
Yeah, one of the hallmarks kind of a Rule coaching staff, finding some guys that they can develop and, maybe surprise some people. So those are 2 of the names there to watch at wide receiver. Some other news kind of around the program. Husker players voting on the first 4 single-digit jersey recipients. Billy Kemp choosing number 1, Isaac Gifford choosing to wear number 2, Luke Reimer number 4, and Jeff Sims number 7. Pretty good group there. I don't think anybody's going to have any concerns with that. And I like how the numbers shake out. Like Sims wearing 7, that feels right to me. Like Kemp with 1.
That's a very quarterback number, 7.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Especially here. Been some good quarterbacks in Nebraska history to wear that number. So.
Yeah,
I don't think any of those 4 are particularly surprising. I think we've heard the coaching staff sing the praises of all those guys over the past 2 or 3 weeks.
And also worth noting, offensive lineman Ethan Piper also voted, but can't wear a single-digit jersey number. Amie, draw a great reaction from Matt Roll suggesting a patch to commemorate that.
So it's not my unique idea. So when I was at LSU, they do a similar thing. Number 7 goes to basically the best player on the team, and number 18 goes to, a senior or seniors who, exemplify everything that it means to be, a hardworking LSU senior. It's like the captain, basically. Mm. And when I was there, an offensive lineman, Lloyd Cushenberry, earned number 18, but he couldn't wear it because he's an offensive lineman. And so they made a really special patch for him to wear. And that's where I, got the idea from, or be like, oh, are you going to do something special? Like thinking that, other teams had thought about that. And Rule goes, oh, that's a great idea. And I'm like, oh.
You surprised him there.
I did. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think, if he has earned it, he should, be able to represent that somehow. And, so it's like, oh, anything special that you can do for Ethan, like a patch or something? And it wasn't my original idea, was the point of that, though. Like, it has been done before. But yeah, after the press conference, Matt asked me to send him the LSU release from Cushenberry's getting 18. So I did. So we'll see if anything happens there. I would like to take all of the credit, but I can't. That goes to LSU's equipment staff.
Well, either way, I think, Ethan Piper just totally deserving of, some sort of recognition. We saw him at Big Ten Media Days, we're all talking about how much of a leader he is in that offensive line room. So he was included in that first bunch. And Rule said, the rest of that voting will come soon. So we'll see who the rest of those single-digit jersey recipients are very soon. And something else on our radar, too, we've got new alternate uniforms, the yearly alternate unis coming from Adidas. They will be worn October 21st against Northwestern, commemorating the 100-year anniversary of Memorial Stadium. What do we think? Pretty plain, huh? Not taking too many risks.
Well, Nebraska, and I think, Wilson, you were the one who said this yesterday. Nebraska, the forward-thinking, futuristic alternate uniforms, they fit for Oregon. Not so much Nebraska. And so when Nebraska does alternate uniforms, like historical ones, I think are much better for them. They look better. They look cleaner. They're very true to the Nebraska brand and what, it stands for, very basic. And so if Nebraska does alternate uniforms, this is the way that I like them to go, because some of the alternate uniforms they've had in the past that were more future thinking just looked wrong to me.
There's been some misses, definitely, and I don't that was nobody's, I think, immediate reaction to this. So at least that's the positive. I will say I do always like when they can kind of incorporate black into the color scheme a little bit. I wish that was a bigger part maybe of the jersey palette, but hey, I think it's nice, a little blue outline. It's a nice touch, something unique, specific for the team to work with. So
and historic.
Yep, absolutely.
Not like that comes out of nowhere.
So yeah, I was not aware of that whole history of that they had to wear blue one game 100 years ago. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice touch. It's not going to be like, why is Nebraska wearing blue?
Yeah, if the whole jersey was blue, I think that would be a pretty.
Are we watching
look like a
Kansas?
Practice jersey out there? Yeah.
No. So yeah, I think they'll look nice. Can't wait to see what those look like in person in October.
Yep, pretty clean design overall. So that is the recent news from the last week, and we'll move on talking all defense and special teams today. Finishing up kind of our roster preview. And we've got the same questions, same topics that we talked last week with the offense. Everybody wanted to hear what we had for defense. So start with the guys who we think are going to be Mr. Dependable. We'll see them every week out there making plays, always in the mix of the action. Amie, we'll start with you. Who you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to turn the question on its head a little bit, even though they're your rules, I'm changing them. Who I want to be Mr. Dependable this season, and I want that to be Luke Reimer. He's a guy that you need out there every game. And with his injury history, you're not necessarily sure what that'll shake out. But he's a guy that you want out there for everything. He is a massive, big leader for this team. He's, has a ton of experience, is credited, for being one of the best players at his position, not just for Nebraska, but throughout the conference. And that's a guy that you need out there every game because he has the opportunity to be a game changer for them. So hopefully no injury issues this year like he has had in the past, and he can stay out there for every game.
Yeah, fits like a glove, I think, in the middle of any defense, in the middle of this defense. Like, he just fits that role perfectly, run, stop, and get into the play, identifying things. Very, very smart, intelligent player. So, yeah, looking forward to see what he can do this year. For me, I don't think you're going out on a limb, and neither am I, to say Quentin Newsome. He's going to be incredible lockdown cornerback. We saw great play from him last year. And I think just in terms of this defense, he's the guy who's furthest along. Like, towards making it to the NFL, towards being like a polished, top college player. He is that guy, similar to Reimer. He shows up on some preseason, all conference lists. Just somebody that you can look to and see dependable play. Like I said, I don't think a lot of quarterbacks will be eager to throw at him. Really good coverage. So I'm going with Quentin Newsome there in the secondary.
I went with Isaac Gifford on this one.
Perfect timing on that.
Yes, it is. It might just be because he is the player I have spent the most time thinking about in the past week or so, but
spoiler, feature coming.
Yeah.
Feature coming.
Journalstar.com. What really stuck out to me these past couple weeks is the number of times his name has come up unprompted in conversation with Matt Rule and with defensive coaches. It's one thing when someone asks about a specific player and a coach says, yeah, he's doing well or whatever. But it's been more than once that Isaac Gifford's name has come up unprompted, that it's been a question of like, who is really taking charge of this defense? Who is emerging as a leader? Who sets the tone for everyone else? And Isaac Gifford's name consistently comes up. Rule said, I like the phrasing he used a week or two ago. He said he's one of the guys who regulates the temperature for the defense. And it just feels like every sign is pointing to him being a, guy out there for 80 snaps every game, captain of the defense, kind of being the guy, the voice back there on the back end playing safety.
He's the regulator.
The regulator. It's not a bad nickname.
call him Warren G out there. Isaac G. Hey, that's a pretty good sounding nickname too. We should get into contact with him. Let him know.
NIL opportunities.
That's right. But I mean, definitely, I think his experience last year playing nickel, a little bit at safety too, is just going to be perfect for him in that rover spot. Having the ability to make plays, get into coverage. Yeah, he's going to be all over as well. So three of those names who we think are going to be out there every week. And moving on to guys that we're maybe excited to watch, who we think might break out, be in for a bigger role down the stretch this season. Amie, with you once again.
Yeah, so I don't know if he's like a breakout candidate per se, because he's already proven himself, but the player I'm most excited to watch is MJ Sherman. I think his energy and just everything about him is exciting. I feel like he's going to fit in with this defense really, really well. I think his skill set lends itself to be a little more position flexible, and just the experience that he's had working with all of the future and current NFL talent that has come out of Georgia the last few years, I think is really beneficial for him and will therefore be beneficial for this defense, and the lessons that he's learned from them and can help pass on with Nebraska's defense, I think is going to be very beneficial. I don't know exactly how he'll fit, but wherever they find a spot for him, I think it'll be exciting every time he's on the field.
Yeah, this is not high-level analysis, but you see Sherman out there, you're like, that's a dude. Like, he just has that physicality to him that you want to see there in the defense. And I'm right there with you. I'm looking at that jack linebacker position. It very well might be Sherman, who takes a lot of those snaps, is the key guy there. Chief Borders, Jamari Butler, I think are the other two who are really in that mix. And I just kind of like the spot, the position in the defense. There's going to be a lot that they have to do, rushing the passer, different responsibilities in the defense. And you look at those three linebackers, they're all athletic, they're all physical. I think it's just going to be a spot where whoever's there, they're going to be making a lot of plays. They're going to be exciting to watch. So looking forward to those jacks. And I'll also throw Omar Brown into the mix as a potential breakout. There's some spots there in the secondary. He showed a lot of potential last year. Coaching staff mentioned him somebody they're excited about. So I'll be interested to watch Omar Brown.
I went with 2, which is maybe cheating, but I think we've clearly established we make up our own rules here.
Said 4. I said 4 names, so.
But they're 2 guys in pretty similar situations, and that's Prince William and Cameron Lenhart. They're both defensive linemen. They were both early enrollees over the spring, and I see them as breakout candidates for a couple of reasons. One being they were really impressive in the spring, especially in the spring game. I think we saw right away from those guys that they're players who can contribute right away, who weren't overwhelmed by the fact that they were still should have been in high school with how old they were, but we're playing college football. We're playing with grown men, or even practicing. And I think, they'll have another summer under their belt, more, another few months of college football strength and conditioning, the nutrition program. And they're on a very kind of malleable, unknown to this point, defensive line. Ty Robinson's kind of the main contributor back from last year, but it's a lot of guys, a lot of transfers, guys like Blaise Gunnerson, who had kind of an opportunity last year, but not a huge one. So I think they'll be able to find their footing, and if they produce, they'll keep getting opportunities.
Yeah, I think to your point that they impressed in the spring, guys were like, they don't look like freshmen.
Yeah.
Well, now they've had another month, in the fall, as they said, gone through off-season conditioning, nutrition, all that stuff that players have been talking about a lot. So those guys look good, definitely in practice, and yeah, excited to see what they can do out there on the field as well. And as we kind of just look at this defense as a whole, this topic about Tony White's 3-3-5, this was a big thing in the spring. Now it's kind of like, okay, they've got it down. They gotta keep some stuff, quiet about the scheme. But I think what we know about it, same stuff that, maybe we heard in the spring too, but going to have a lot of different looks that they throw at teams, try to keep them off balance. The linebackers are going to move around a lot, particularly that Jack. The Mike will probably stay pretty consistent there in the middle of the defense. Then those 5 defensive backs, they can do some different things, different packages with them. But it seems like, they, the players, the coaches, everybody knows, they're trying to keep those details in, but they're pretty excited about what this defense can do.
Yeah, they're excited about it. But some of the older guys, especially like your traditional linebacker types, have said, it's hard to get used to, like, knowing that you can do more than just stay in your perspective box, so to speak. Not the box, but your position box, like what you're supposed to traditionally do in these roles. And so having more freedom has been a little weird for those guys to get used to, but they're working on it, and it'll be interesting to see. It's very much and I've said this before, like a pro style defense where, just because you're a linebacker, that doesn't mean you have to do like these specific things. Like, you can go to the ball. You can do things that are more typical of like an edge rusher, that type of stuff. Positionless is basically the term that they're going for, especially with, the guys in the secondary and linebackers, except for the Mike. That's going to stay pretty traditional, I think.
Yep, definitely. We've heard that positionless moniker a few times. So that's kind of the overall look at it. But as we talk about this defensive line, and Wilson, you kind of mentioned it, like if you're looking at a spot on the defense where depth is maybe concerned, experience is a concern, it's definitely at that defensive line. All the guys you mentioned, and Rule said the other day, he's got 5-6 guys that they feel good about on the defensive line. They want 7 or 8, which, really, as you talk about going into Big Ten play, guys get banged up there. It always happens. So they want to develop more depth. We're looking at like a Ruquan Buckley, maybe some of these incoming guys. Kai Wallen, he's a JUCO product. Where do we think that this depth is going to develop on this defensive line?
Beyond the 2 guys mentioned earlier, Kai Wallen has been a kind of intriguing piece to me. He's another guy who we haven't heard a ton about him this fall, but in the spring, the coaching staff generally spoke positively of him. And just he's interesting to me just in the fact teams generally don't recruit JUCO guys if they don't have a plan for him. I don't think you're just bringing in a JUCO guy to be run on the 3rd unit or whatever. So I think he has an interesting skill set off the edge. I'm interested to see what he can do, how much of a run he'll get when the season starts.
Yeah, Nash Hutmaker also in that mix, a guy that is coming back with experience. They're going to depend on him. So some different names there at defensive line. Again, that's something we'll watch as the season goes on. But moving on from defense, important to talk about special teams. It's been a really big focus of Rule throughout his coaching tenure. He's got an experienced assistant, Ed Foley, who's been with him at a lot of different spots. So just looking at the special teams unit, I think the first name you got to have out there is Brian Buschini, because hey, a lot of teams don't have a dependable punter. That's a big concern when their games, field position battle. But Buschini, if he's not hurt, which he's good right now. He was hurt quite a lot last season. When he's not hurt, I mean, he is 40, 45 yards every time, booming at 50 if he gets that chance.
Yeah, and what he's been working on in this offseason is more like positional, directional things. So coffin corners and just making sure his game is elevated everywhere. What he's also been doing, though, in practice is he's been working on kickoff, which outside people are like, oh, yeah, whatever. NFL teams want specialists who can do several different things. It's not out of the question for punters to be asked to do kickoff. You see that a lot in the NFL, actually. Like the more you can do, the better your chances are of latching on, because there are only, it's not like teams carried like 3 punters. That's just not what happens. So that's been even more intriguing to me than just him standing out at punter so far.
Yeah, certainly. And it was kind of a case too where last year Buschini said, the guys who were there were better than him at kickoff. So he's like, just don't need to do it. But this year that opportunity was there. He's been practicing. They like what they see. So he may be in that role this fall. We will see. But kind of the other big topic there is the kicking competition. Timmy Bleekrode started last year, very dependable on extra points, did more of, shorter yardage field goals. They didn't trot him out there at 40 plus too long, too much of the time. But Tristan Albano coming in, freshman from Omaha West Side. He's made some big kicks in Memorial Stadium in the Class A state championship last year. We've seen him a little bit in practice. He's got a big leg. That's something that stands out when you watch him kick.
Yeah, and that's an interesting competition. You don't always go into a season with a kicker competition. And Ed Foley said something when we talked to him a week or two ago that I thought was interesting. It was one of those things that, I think, well, duh, but then I think, well, I hadn't really thought about that. And he was like, yeah, it's a little easier determining the kicker, it was like 2 guys are competing for tight end snaps, 2 equally informed football minds can have different opinions on who's better. The kicker, it's just who makes more field goals. And so we will know the answer to that, week 1 or maybe, in the week before that of who is kicking field goals for Nebraska.
Absolutely. And we heard Timmy Bleekrode talk a couple weeks ago, by the way, and, he's embracing the competition. He's being a good teammate. So credit to him for, going through that situation. And he very well might earn that spot back. Like I said, he was consistent last year. So that's something that's been going on throughout camp.
Yeah, he's a guy who's been in a kicker competition before. I believe he mentioned at his last school before Nebraska, he had to earn that spot as a freshman.
Comes with the territory, definitely. And the other aspect, I think, of the special teams unit is the return game, especially when you think back to last year or two.
Horrible.
Fair catch every time.
Horrible.
I mean, what did they have? They had 60 punt return yards or 80.
It was
horrible.
Around 60, and it was the worst in all of, not just Power 5, all of FBS football. It's atrocious, and it's hard to get worse. So they need to get better. It was awful, just awful. But maybe they're moving forward in that. Several different guys working at punt return and practice on Tuesday. You have Billy Kemp, IGC, Alex Bullock, and defensive back Ethan Nation working back there too. So they could go several different ways with that. But however they go, they need to return punts, whoever is back there.
I mean, it's a focus. They want to get yardage, contributions, anything that they can from special teams. And you look at Billy Kemp there. I mean, that's a guy who's shifty as and explosive as it gets.
Yeah, and a pretty accomplished punt returner too. He did that quite a few years at Virginia. I think he's pretty far up, even like the Virginia like all-time punt return list. For a guy, if they were looking to improve their punt returning, he's a pretty good guy to have snagged in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and like you said, Ethan Nation sounds like just an explosive, athletic guy. Whatever wherever they put him on defense, and especially with these return opportunities, they're pretty excited about it. He was working on kick return too, as well as Garcia Castaneda and Emma Johnson, just in the portion of practice that we saw on Tuesday. So, there were different units, might be working more guys there, but those were the ones that we saw, the guys we've heard to potentially making an impact there as returners on special teams. So I think that's what we got for defense and special teams. A couple Husker volleyball notes that we want to get into today. First off, we got the preseason poll came out, the AVCA, Nebraska coming in tied for number 5, trailing Texas, Wisconsin, Stanford, and Louisville as the top 4, tied with Pitt. Really good. All those programs, very consistent. Nebraska will see a couple this season as well.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. The season will be here before we know it. The red-white scrimmage is this weekend. I'm not sure how it snuck. I'm not sure how it snuck up on me like that. And then the season opener is next Friday against Utah State.
Absolutely. So things coming quickly. And for all of you volleyball fans, look for a special Life in the Red edition next week. Season preview. We'll preview Volleyball Day in Nebraska as well. Talking all things volleyball with our Brent Wagner, local volleyball reporter. Been doing it at a high level for a really long time. So you'll want to see that. That will be a great season preview for you. So that's all we got today. I enjoyed talking defense special teams. We'll get into season breakdown. Look forward to previewing Minnesota here pretty soon. Again, just 2 weeks away. A lot going on here in Lincoln. So make sure to stay tuned. JournalStar.com will have more practice news and coverage to come next week. And thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.